Hunter.
Zach.
Welcome to Value Stack Podcast, man. Glad to get you here in person.
Glad we finally be here.
So typically I prepare a topic list and all, but we're just going to wing it today, man. I think like you, as I mentioned to you in Telegram the other day, you have such a wide breadth and also depth of knowledge that I think it'll be more productive if we just see where we go. But there's some general things that I wanted to hash on today. Yes, pun intended. I think it's a good place to start by maybe talking about how you got involved in not just Bitcoin, but working in the Bitcoin space. And then like, what are you doing right now? And we'll start there.
Well, I came into it in kind of roundabout way, as that often happens. You know, I made a tweet the other day that was like super popular, one of my most popular tweets. And I just said, I didn't start off a Bitcoin maximalist, but I eventually realized the maxis were right.
Always are. Or usually. I guess always is a lot. Okay. Well, yeah, it's a winding...
The principle is, I think, sound. Sound is money.
So how did you get involved in working, rather than how, why did you get involved in working in this? And why are you wearing a big Bitcoin orange shirt? Every time I see you wearing that shirt, it's just kind of like, hey, this is what I'm about.
My entire personality is Bitcoin.
Same, man.
Yeah. So,
like, what was it about Bitcoin that like stood out to you so much?
Well, what's funny is like, so like I kind of started with, like I do have a background in cryptocurrency and Web3 going back to 2017. And even before that, I was a professional software developer in 2012, early as 2012. And I've been writing, JavaScript and web stuff even far before then, maybe 2008, 2007 was some of my first like Python and JavaScript code. But in 2018, I quit my job at a Silicon Valley database company.
Not Silicon Valley Bank.
No, just it is a company that did business in Silicon Valley. Who I'd sometimes go there on business trips. It's fucking miserable. But anyway, no. I mean, it's gay mecca. I shouldn't.
I saw a video of this guy.
SF.
There were these two people naked, homeless, sitting, just having a conversation, sitting cross-legged Indian style. And the first comment was like, "Man, you got to give it to that posture." They were sitting up real straight. I was like, "You got to give it to them, man." But yeah. Anyway, crazy city. Like things are really. I think that's like probably one of the canaries of the fiat endemic, or it is just like you see it firsthand, the wealth inequality there, because there's so much tech money there. I think it is more. You see it more apparent there.
Yeah, but it's also unsustainable because, like, during the pandemic, there were only two cities to actually experience deflation.
And was that San Francisco was one of them?
San Francisco and New York City.
Why do you think that was?
People leaving.
Oh, yeah. Not here, man. Denver's pricey.
Yeah, well, it's good for the incumbents. We purchased our house.
You got a house?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I thought you bought Bitcoin.
I'm short Bitcoin. Clearly. I have too much furniture.
You have a chair in your house, dude?
Oh, shit, dude. Actually, I did another post on Twitter a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, where I showed a picture of my raggedy ass, like, computer chair that, like, I'd had for, way too long. And the cats had scratched it up, and it was torn apart, and pieces of it were flaking off. And I was like, parts of me always like do that calculus, right? Like, would I rather have the Bitcoin?
Yeah.
But
can't live in a Bitcoin.
No. And that's the thing is, like, people say, sound money is going to keep people from spending on stuff. Like, I'm already living on a Bitcoin standard. So, I'm always doing that calculation, and I still spend money. So
true. You got to eat.
Yeah.
And you can't live in a Bitcoin.
Yeah. And also,
I told somebody that the other day.
Another thing that people also confuse sometimes is not selling versus spending, because
you're not turning it back into fiat.
Right. Like, look, I'll spend my Bitcoin. Like, if somebody wants to take Bitcoin as medium of exchange, fuck yes, right? Like, absolutely. We're doing business in Bitcoin, and there are no intermediaries involved here. And you know, I do that. I do that occasionally. Actually, I do it very little because I lost most of my Bitcoin.
Yeah,
it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, my boating accident too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds to me like the part of the Bitcoin aspect that you might like is the permissionlessness, but then have also maybe be well equipped to understand it because of your background in software engineering. Could you maybe?
I would disagree with that actually too a little bit, because there's a lot of technologists, myself included, who just ignored Bitcoin for the longest time. I mean, like I knew about it pretty early on. Like, I was on 4chan back when that was like, you know,
a thing. It's still a thing.
I mean, well, it's more popular than it is now.
Yeah, I like 4chan.
But you know, like on 4chan, they were talking about like, you know, the low orbit ion cannon, and like which is a DDoS tool. And is
that like a conspiracy thing?
No, it's like it's the name of a software program you can run on your computer to DDoS a website.
I thought it was like a low orbit thing that we're like, there's a conspiracy out there. They're shooting ions down.
Well, the Jews do have space
that would
lasers
be on
now.
4chan too.
Yeah, the Jewish space lasers do exist now. They call it like, what is it called? Not Iron Shield. It's
oh geez.
You know about that? Iron Dome. There's
god.
Light beam or something. I forget it.
Anything with light. Speed of light, beam scares
Iron
you.
beam. That's it.
Iron beam.
That's what they call it.
You don't get hit with that.
Yeah. No. It's
you don't
literally
like a beam or anything iron.
It's a tactical laser and it can shoot out like mortars and shit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. This was like you know, what is it? Soft War, the book you're reading here on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds like low Earth orbit, like missile defense things. I guess we'll get into that book later. So, okay, well, you said that it's not so much your software engineer. Did it make it harder for you because you had to kind of unlearn what you already thought? Or?
Well, yeah. For the longest time, I thought of Bitcoin as an incredibly inefficient database.
Well, it is, right? I mean, it is.
No doubt.
But there are trade-offs that are made intentionally for those inefficiencies that are
it's also
underappreciated.
It's also worth noting that I was like very much a socialist at that time.
Okay.
So I didn't think about or understand money. And I was able to not think about or understand money for a very long time because I was in a privileged position as a Silicon Valley tech worker.
What happened that gave you either the motive or the inspiration or lit the fire under your butt to make that mental, and then also, I guess, like more than just mental leap, because there's a lot of things that you changed about, like now you work in this industry.
Yeah. So like in 2018, I did leave that, comfort to start a startup. And it went poorly because the market went poorly, but it was in Web3 and we did a fair amount of Solidity and Ethereum and stuff. And web development was all the stuff I was doing then. And like that worked out. That was that only worked out so long, and then I went to work as a principal engineer for like a Fortune 500 company, and then after that I did some other stuff, and come 2019 when I needed another job, from like I'll usually like go between like risk taking and then not risk taking, like my wounds, like I mean,
what phase are we in right now?
Well,
in between.
It's kind of funny. I think I've found an equilibrium, something I'm truly passionate about. Before I go into that, I just want to finish where yeah. So, principal engineer, Fortune 500 company, then quit that, and then in early 2019, and then went on to buy my house, and get married. But get married, buy my house.
Amazing timing. Jeez.
Yes.
Right before everything fell to shit and house prices skyrocketed and rates were super low.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
What a honeymoon. Locked up in your home for next year. You really find out if you love someone.
Yeah. Actually, that was really fortuitous. I lucked out. I was lucky. I'm lucky in many ways, I like to think. I'm lucky that I see things before other people do, and so sometimes like that's also a bit of like asymmetry, information asymmetry that you can capitalize on. One thing I saw for a long time that worked pretty well for me was that JavaScript was going to be a big thing, like a bigger thing than people thought it was going to be. This was like 2012, like when people, still thought of JavaScript as like, I wouldn't say DHTML, but just like Web 2.0, Ajax, like the capability to go to a web page and enter some information and hit submit, and the page doesn't refresh entirely when you post something, right? Because that's what it used to do. Like it was basically a form you submit, and it would refresh entirely. It would go completely blank and load a new version. And like MapQuest like existed before this technology existed, where it's seamless. And like you would click up the left or right compass arrow, and it would just like scooch over a bit, and you'd have to wait, on a 56K modem. It was horrendous. And, a big founding, feature of Web 2.0 was the capability to do things more smoothly and dynamically and have a more rich user experience. I kind of like, I was using HTML5 before it was even a thing in many browsers. Like, I get an HTML5 like to make SVG graphics interactive back in like 2008 or 2009, and this was actually before Chrome browser, like the Chrome browser even existed.
Right.
That came out in 2009, and I was using like new versions of Firefox, and what was nice about HTML5 was you didn't need to use XHTML to like blend the two. You could use regular HTML to combine JavaScript and graphics and all sorts of neat stuff. And I was just playing with that for a bit. And I wound up being able to demonstrate some of that to get my first job.
What do you think? What do you think? Why do you think you saw the rise of JavaScript or the potential for JavaScript? What was it about it that stood out to you at that time that other people were missing?
Well, the thing like people thought of in JavaScript is that it only ran on the front end. It was only for the web. Okay. And there was this new thing at the time called Node.js.
Which is a framework, right?
It's
I don't know. I'm just mentioning words I know. I've heard.
I call that? I mean, like I would call it
a thing.
I would call it a runtime.
Is it a thing? Yes or no?
It is a thing.
All right, continue.
Okay. So
it's a runtime. Got it. Node.js. Got it. And a lot of things are built on Node. I see people just refer to it as Node.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you saw the potential of Node.js, and can you help us figure out how that led to the modern web stack today, which is like basically JavaScript's essential?
Yeah. So like I got into it before, all the big frameworks came out, like AngularJS and React and Vue, like none of that stuff existed when I first got into it. And like a lot of the earlier tooling, because like Node.js is really good for web tooling, like building stacks to make take shortcuts when you're coding, to like have tools that build your code for you, that automate certain things. And I got really into that, and I got really into and just server side stuff. And I was a full stack web developer before like people were calling it that.
Okay.
And when people were starting to call it that, I started getting phone calls. And my second job, I got a 6-figure salary, and that was great. That worked out great, and it allowed me to kind of take risks in between. Like once I get bored at a job, I'd do something else.
I mean, people need change.
Yeah.
They resist change, but it simultaneously also changes the fruit of life, the spice of life.
I like to think that, like, for example, I don't have a college diploma, but I like to think I have a diploma from the startup university. Because
mine's from Hard Knocks.
Well,
School of Hard Knocks.
I'm not familiar with the specifics of that one, but my education is.
I'll show you sometime.
Okay. Well, okay. Regardless, I'm a lover, not a fighter. But regardless, what was it?
You're talking about not getting a college degree, but you got you got the startup degree, which is actually taking that knowledge and building something with it.
That's how I learn. Like, I mean, I think the best way to learn is to try to build something, like think of something you want to do and then learn everything you need to know to do it.
Did you have an early project that you built in JavaScript, or like what was some of your early projects that you coded and built that you're proud of today?
Oh, one of my earliest ones was like it was kind of like a 3D editor that used voxels. And do you know voxels?
No.
It was basically like Minecraft, but in third person.
Okay.
Yeah, but like isometric, do you know isometric, the projection? Yeah. And so I wrote the code for all this graphics on my own. Like I wouldn't say like
a game.
I referenced things, but yes, I taught myself game stuff, like game math, like geometry and trigonometry. I actually never passed those, or even entered those classes in my educational career.
But when you have something to apply it to.
Yes. Now that's I can safely say I understand certain concepts in geometry, trigonometry, and linear algebra. In particular, like matrix transformation is a thing that's very common in graphics. And I taught myself this, things like the unit circle, but I also have gaps. And not only do I have gaps, like I think of it in terms of JavaScript in what I learned it in. And so I don't even know the notation. Like I can't read equations. So, but I can read JavaScript.
I mean, I think like, but it's useful information. Like I've talked about this all the time, like just with friends and stuff. Like our school system is so woefully unpreparing people to support a family and themselves in the future, because sure, like it's cool to know like biology terms and whatnot, but like first off, ChatGPT can remember it better. It can re-explain it better with better comprehension and accuracy. And eventually, like, I mean, just like if you're not using that for your career, it's like wasted knowledge. And like people should be learning by doing. This is like the Montessori method in schooling, is really like hands-on learning, because that knowledge sticks with you so much better. So, well,
you know what they told me in school was that you wouldn't always have a calculator in your pocket.
Well, they were freaking wrong, weren't they?
Those authorities in your life were telling you lies. And
lies, dude. No wonder we love Bitcoin, man. It's like no more lies.
Yeah, well, another wake-up call was the food pyramid, right?
Yeah, because they drink eat a bunch of grains and sugar, and they're like, yeah. When I understood modern perspectives on nutrition that aren't warped by an industry, right?
Then it was just eye opening. Like because I remember they had that in textbooks. They had it.
Oh yeah, I remember it.
They put it on our brains.
But then they teach you this stuff instead of like, hey, here's how to build tools that will teach you skills that you can, it's like almost like a regurgitative, more like recollection, recall sort of memory that they want instead of application.
Some
conceptual.
of my most educational parts of my childhood were the parts that were like me doing something out of my own volition that was outside of, I was extracurricular.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
yeah, I learned.
I did a lot of reading.
I did too.
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
No.
Me
well,
either.
I should rephrase that. I did not at the time. I do have a sister, but she's much younger than me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I didn't grow up with siblings, so it's like I did so much reading, so much time on the computer.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the ways that really I remember, kind of like a 0 to 1 moment for me in learning computers, was setting up my own private World of Warcraft server. That was because I think I was probably 14 or something at the time. And that was a big thing, dude. I just remember how much I had to read and learn and trial and troubleshoot and just, it really tested my comfort zone of what I understood about computers and networking and stuff. And I talk about this in previous podcasts before. World of Warcraft's how I got into economics.
How did you, I'm sorry, it's new information to me to know that you could self-host a World of Warcraft server, and it brings to mind a question: why wasn't that something Vitalik Buterin did?
Well, it wasn't it wasn't a server with anyone else. It was like a local copy.
Sure, but like you could just say I'll make my own server with blackjack and hookers, right?
Well, you couldn't do that. It was like
Vitalik, like he literally made his own blockchain with blackjack and hookers, I guess, right? It was smart contracts, I don't know, but he made it, and his like story, like origin story, he points to is that like they nerfed one of his weapons that he really liked, and
in WoW,
and
should have never done that, Blizzard,
and like it set off a train of thoughts in his mind where he was like, shit, like maybe decentralization might be a really nice thing to have.
Yeah.
And except like it makes me wonder, like, oh, you can self-host a World of Warcraft server, so it makes me wonder, like,
but I was the only one in it, so there's no one to raid with, no one to trade with. It was literally just for me to like learn, because I couldn't. My issue, I really don't, we shouldn't go on too much about World of Warcraft, but my issue was that I could not get into a guild that could like kill Illidan, and I really wanted the blades of Azeroth.
I feel like we're getting in the weeds here,
and so I made a private server so that I could get my own. I could just like kill him with one hit and get those items because I wanted to see how cool they looked. That was it.
Oh, okay.
All right, so World of Warcraft, but yeah, learned about economics through that. Because I did kind of similarly to Vitalik. I recognized there was like there was this digital economy that was emerging, and there was value there because people spent their real time doing to earn these items.
Yeah, they had gold farming.
Right, exactly. People spent real money on gold. But yeah, so I mean, we both were like in computers and
the one MMO I allowed myself to play.
Eve.
How'd you guess?
I think maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
it's strategy. Very long-term strategy.
Spreadsheets in space. Yeah, it made a lot of sense to me.
That's why, because it was about the most calculatable. Yeah. Like World of Warcraft was so much about like timing and like reaction time and whatnot. But Eve was very, very much like reminded me of like Risk, like you know, in that way.
Right.
Like,
I loved that game when I was a kid too. I loved Risk. I loved playing that. Yeah.
Hence we are. What in Bitcoin is like the most obvious, best risk adjusted bet you could make, in my opinion, today. And no surprise that like calculated risks I'm attracted to. I'm like,
yeah. Asymmetry is a big part of that, like being able to have like an asymmetric amount of armies to go in a particular spot to go in.
Yeah. Well, I got some questions for you about like continuing our code conversation. So you were saying that like you figured out JavaScript, so I kind of saw that early. Because Bitcoin's permissionless, it appealed to you, and I think even though you said because your software developer mind maybe didn't help you connect the dots. I think it did probably help you understand the concepts once they were presented to you. So. Now, what I wonder is like because you're also kind of early on two other things that I see you sounding the bell on. One is NFTs on Bitcoin. We talked about Ordinals very early. You were on that train before they were even launched, I believe. Like you were telling at the devs meetup. I think probably your awareness of that comes from your work with RGB, right? And but then there's also the other thing is that you're a big Rustation, right? Like I literally know nothing about Rust except that you think Rust is a good language to listen to program in and use, and so. Because I respect your opinion, and because you were also correct about JavaScript, and because you were also correct about Ordinals, I'm going to just throw a flyer here and say you might be right about Rust too. So what do you think it is what is it about these things that appeal to you? And I guess, we could start at one, go to the other. Is there a similar trait maybe of the two that you saw together? Like, why do you keep nailing these flyers before everybody else? Give us your secrets, please.
Well, to be honest, I did not get NFTs when I first saw them. Like, I thought they were really silly, and JPEGs, it's silly. Like, why would you want ownership of that?
But GIFs are great. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but eventually, I'd come across the RGB project, and it made a lot of sense to me because I was at that point, I had become a Rust developer. I had completely shed my, convictions about JavaScript, mostly because during the pandemic in 2020, I went to go find another job, after my cushy tech jobs. I was like, well, of course there's going to be another job, right? Because I'm so experienced and so talented and so smart. And I went for about 3 months, just back-to-back interviews, like, dozens of interviews, and like maybe 50. And it at a certain point, like, I was starting to just get crushed and burned out and bitter and angry. And, my money was running out, and the world was getting crazy because it was the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
And it was kind of a transformative time for me because, it was the first time in my life I really did feel a sort of like economic or financial stressor that was substantial to me, and that changed me, I think, like my perspective on things and a lot of things. And also during that time, I had a lot of friends who were compromising on principles I thought were pretty darn valuable, like freedom of speech. They were like saying, well, sometimes, if it's hate speech, then people shouldn't be able to say that. They should be punished or something. I was like, I don't know if that's healthy. I think it's important for people to air their frustrations, even though it might be something you disagree with. Like, there was, there's people out there who have the grace to say, who go and fight and die for a country, right? But they might disagree with what you say, but they'll fight to defend it.
Right.
And so, like, that's kind of like almost a classical liberal sensibility I'd come to realize. Like, that was something that the founding fathers, with their ideologies that were so radical at the time, and still radical in many ways compared to the rest of the world, that was something they valued. Like this egalitarianism that, any person could say something and it couldn't be shut down necessarily. And that like even the, most like smallest minority could, can, speak up and speak truth to power. And that's an incredible thing. And why would you want to fuck with that?
Right.
Well, during the pandemic, things got a little crazy, and it just changed my perspective on a lot of things. It opened my eyes.
There was a correct way of viewing things, right? And if you didn't agree with that, you said changed your mind on a lot of things, and
it was a very transformational time for me.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't find a job in what I knew how to do up until that point where I had like 8 years of experience in, I was a principal engineer, for a large company. I would like to think I could have capitalized on that. But because I couldn't, and I just got burned out and angry and, just couldn't be functional during an interview at a certain point, I had to take a step back and just focus on, YOLO focus on something I wanted to look into. And what I wanted to look into was Rust, and the Rust, the programming language. And so I was tinkering with it a bit at the time because I just kind of done some investigation and some into IPFS and things like that. And I was really frustrated with my experiments with IPFS because they were all in JavaScript, and there were just a number of different layers of inefficiency that were being introduced whenever I wanted to. So like the idea was for you to have, like, for every web browser to also be a web server. And I thought that would be a really powerful concept to have, like, kind of like a peer-to-peer web that, kind of like a free net, like, is an example of this.
Right. It's like a IPFS. I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, well, I mean, that wasn't really necessarily what IPFS solved, but I was trying to use IPFS to solve that, to like have like kind of, a platform browser that you could publish things on.
Oh, like a client and server all in one.
Yeah, all together, client and server, and just like in the node, all together on the same machine. And it turns out, if you want to do that, when you're playing with web technologies, I came to realize web technologies are not built for efficiency. They're built for scale. They're designed to scale, multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies, their user bases to the billions. Like they're incredibly over-engineered for what they do and what they accomplish. And only ordained tech priests like me could really actually work on them.
Sounds like the banking system. Like I've heard that, like the code that runs our banking system, there's like hardly anyone knows how to even code in Cobalt. Is that the? I would say that's slightly more arcane. However, someday maybe JavaScript will go the way of Cobalt. So did Rust, does Rust compete with or sort of aim to replace JavaScript, or does it live harmoniously next to it? Like how do they? Let's just say it made a lot of sense to me as a Node.js developer. The Rust framework or code language? Ecosystem, let's call it that. Yeah. And so you have, it sounds like you now use Rust exclusively as much as I can. As a replacement for JavaScript or instead of. At least on the back end. I'm just like, I'm not a coder. So like, I know you use like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript like all together. So I didn't know if they like coexisted like that, or if they were like, you would use Rust to there's sort different of do that. Various levels in which you can go with it. And one thing to know about Rust is it's incredibly difficult to write, like to learn, to write, to work in. But it's efficient? Speedy? It is incredibly efficient, secure, and safe, and compact, and well-designed, and type safe. The safety is like a big, it's just hard to write. From secure, yeah, you have to think through a lot of things you normally wouldn't have to think through in any other language. And also, it's fundamentally a systems programming language. So it's like the lowest common denominator of programming languages, where like if you can do systems, it turns out you can pretty much do anything else. But not everything else that isn't capable of systems programming can do all that, say, Rust or C or C++ can. Yeah. And is it just like, okay, so what will... You answered that about Rust. Well, what is it about the RGB protocol and the Ordinals? Is it a protocol? Ordinals is technically an index. It's called ORD or ORD. Yeah. Index. Oh, yeah. Right. And index is the blockchain, and that's why you needed like transaction index on. Right when you sync and you run and it's like it exists like kind of on top of the. Like it's like a meta protocol. It's almost at a layer. Like if we're talking about layers, I would kind of put indexes almost as like a half step between layer 2 and layer 3. Okay. And that's what ORD is. Yeah, basically like a layer 1.5. Yeah. How does that differ from RGB? Well, it's all on chain, whereas RGB's major innovation is that you can perform generalized smart contract state transitions off chain, which is an Ethereum thing normally, right? State transitions. Well, Bitcoin has its own state transitions, or smart contracts. Contracts, yes. Well, technically, we also have contracts, right? We have HTLCs, right? Right. That's what the C stands for in contract. But and we just write them in script, and script is deterministic, and it not infinite. It is not Turing complete, as they say. And I think of that as a feature, and also it's arguable whether it's Turing complete. You can technically make certain kinds of state machines if you're willing to very concretely describe all the different parts of the program. You can do a heck of a lot, and one of those things you can do is apparently put JPEGs in script, in the witness. Crazy thing. Were you like more aware of Casey's progress on that because of your work on RGB? Kind of, but also so it's a project that's written in Rust. And Ordinals this? Yes, or the Ordinals. Another one. Yeah. Take that, JavaScripters. And we kind of all know each other. Like there's Dan Gold. He's a
person who's really into like privacy tech, and he builds stuff in Rust. He helped build our PayJoin implementation that we use in Bitmask. And there's BDK and LDK, of course.
Those are all in Rust.
Yeah,
that's Square blocks stuff.
I think they call it Spiral now.
Spiral. Spiral's a subsidiary block.
And Matt Coralla works for them.
He's a Rust developer.
Well, he has become one, and actually, I think he always really has.
You all will become Rust developers.
Well, it's funny you say. Actually, he I remember coming across a pull request where, like, I once went to Bitcoin/Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Core, right?
Yeah.
I went to there and I just looked for Rust on the issues.
Nothing.
Actually, there was one thing. There was a pull request that Matthew Corallo opened that basically implemented a portion of Bitcoin's networking stack in Rust, kind of like with the hope that it would be more secure and more performant. And it was eventually closed. It was not considered something that it was time for. This was also 2018, so like that guy was like way ahead of the curve. Yeah. And
when did you start learning Rust?
The same time.
About the same. How long? When did Rust come out? When did it first start getting used?
Well, yeah, like there's a couple like.
What are the major time milestones in Rust development so far? I think
Graydon Hoare came up with it in like 2009 or 2010 at Mozilla, and but it didn't really quite come into its own until maybe 2015. Like modern,
so it's barely a decade of popularization.
Yeah, and
so it's got a long way to go still in development. Future.
Yeah, and it also kind of like came out around. Technically, it first came out when Go was starting to get popular.
Right, I've heard. I'm working on rebuilding the value stack website using Go because it wasn't
like Hugo or something.
Yep, Hugo. Yeah, it was.
It's a very popular static site generator.
Yeah, it's super fast. It's super performant. Loads really easy, lightweight.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, the WordPress. My WordPress site sucks.
Go is a very good thing for that kind of thing. It's good for, tooling and things you normally use Node.js for, kind of.
Okay.
It's better than Node.js.
Yeah, because I run like Hugo server, like Node, and it runs a local host server. It's pretty sweet, dude. I'm getting into that kind of, so thank you for answering some of those questions.
Yeah. Go is neat. There is kind of a rivalry, I would say, between Go and Rust developers. And
the gauntlet.
I guess.
It's been thrown down.
I try to be gracious about it. Like,
Go sucks.
What do they call it? Magnanimous.
Rust rules.
Yeah. But tribalism isn't always that productive but
take Bitcoin and /Ethereum. You can see that.
Well,
actually, it's very productive for Bitcoin.
Well,
we'll see.
So like that question, right? Is Bitcoin a tribe, or is it a cult, or is it a religion?
The full RBF versus non-RBF, that's tribalism. No?
I mean,
because you had a hot take or a well-informed take on that, because you used to or are working with Peter Todd, right?
I love the guy. We talk sometimes. He was one of the first people to implement, or actually like just at least talk about what RGB would become, along with Giacomo Zucco.
Yeah. Okay. And where is that today? RGB, like how? Like, because you sent me a text a couple of days ago saying that the Bitmask wallet coming soon. You even made a ZAC token, which was legit.
It took us so much work to get to that point.
Yeah.
It's so cool that like finally we got the release out. Every release gets harder and harder. It is
just make it work.
It's just
without breaking something.
Well, RGB is one criticism levied against it is very complex, and it's complex. I mean, anything of value is going to probably be complex, right? I mean, Bitcoin is complex, Lightning is complex. It has complexities in its own way, right? And so it's no different.
So Bitmask is an RGB capable wallet.
It is a RGB capable Bitcoin wallet. It supports Taproot natively, and it also supports Lightning transfers. But it's all on testnet. Like we
no mainnet yet.
No, not yet. And for good reason. Because the latest version of RGB it's like just like parts of it are coming out just now, is a major breaking change. Like none of the tokens from before will work on.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like we want to knock this one out. Like this is the point where we're like, okay, once we like, let's do all the things that we realized we needed to do that aren't always obvious beforehand. Let's just like finally like after enough iterations, Maxim Orlovsky, he's one of the core RGB devs. And he's a freaking machine. He writes like millions of lines of Rust, like it's nobody's business. Beautiful code too. But the thing is, it when he builds stuff, sometimes like you have an idea of where you want to go, like you have a goal when you're writing code, but sometimes you run into like obstacles or roadblocks or things you realize you haven't thought through yet.
Yeah.
And like one of those things was, early versions of RGB, like 0.4, could only do like tokens. Like it could only do like there was like, RGB 20 was basically the major only thing it would support, which is the fungible token standard. And and you can approximate non-fungible tokens by setting certain parameters on a fungible token. So the two major parameters, other than the name of it, are supply and precision.
Mm-hmm.
And if you set the supply of 1 and precision to 0, you have essentially something that can't be divided into many things, and it also cannot. You don't have many.
Which
of
was
them.
the Zach token that you made.
I think
you gave it a supply of 1. It was unique.
Yeah, and so I'll have to get that to you. But
well, wait. I thought it was not going to be valid next time. You'll introduce a change.
Good point. Maybe once we do the new one,
I would like to issue value stack token on Bitcoin, and then Gary Gensler's coming.
And
then it would be security. Like it's like, yo, if you're like one of the first 50 people, you get like exclusive access.
Well, like you can do like cool little,
I can't even
little
say
favors, right? Like you can give people like little tokens and
like support, like Patreon, but like not having them
acknowledgement. That you were there, that you contributed, that kind of thing. Like that's a really cool use for
where you get into trouble is saying, hey, anybody who holds a token gets 5% of the podcast revenue.
Oh my God.
Because that's what most tokens are like. You're gonna get this,
or you'll get yield. It's always about yield.
It's all the
right?
yield, dude.
Like,
you are the yield.
Oh my God. Like there's like a criticism against Bitcoin, like there's no yield in Bitcoin. It's like, oh my God, you don't get it.
Yeah. Like the yield is number go up.
Where we're going, we won't need yield.
That's right. Flora forever.
Yeah. Anyway, early versions of RGB were pretty limited to kind of like similar to how Taro is now. Like Taro is limited in pretty much just to tokens. And RGB gradually got more ambitious about, and it became more clear how generalized smart contracting would be done using it. And, we came up with things like a virtual machine called ALUVM. And there's like kind of a data distribution network called Storm. And there's still some things in the work like Bifrost is a kind of like Lightning node implementation that adds additional token functionality to Lightning
on top of it.
Yeah. And so like these things, like we didn't really have things in place. Like we had placeholders. We had like, an idea of how they would be implemented. We had specs, or at least, calls and talks about it. Right. But like once you start, like the code is almost like proof of work, right? Like once you actually get into doing it, it becomes real.
Yeah.
And it's never real until you write it down. Right. And so, once you do, like you start, and it's even more than just like writing, because like you can write anything down, but like code, it has to like work, it has to compile, right?
Especially when it's code with real money.
Yeah, and so
with a finite supply.
Yeah, and so we kind of like iterated on certain features and implementations and things, right. And we kind of finally grew towards what RGB has become now.
Is there a mainnet target? Like, are you guys trying to get it out this year, next year?
Definitely. Like, I mean, engineers are really terrible at making estimates, but
is it coming in the next 5 years?
We'll see. At DIBA, what we like to do is just set aspirational timelines, right? Like kind of like Elon time, right?
Right. We'll be on the moon next week.
This is our goal, right? This is a goal to shoot towards, to build towards. And
that way we keep ourselves accountable. If
we overshoot, we can readjust, we can reevaluate, that kind of thing. We can get an idea of why it took so much longer, right? But ideally, we have a target, and our target for mainnet, from what I understand, like is we'd really like to have something on mainnet by it's time for Bitcoin Miami in May.
Oh, that's really soon.
Yeah.
Oh, this episode won't even be out till then. Probably. Shoot. Okay. Well, that could be a lot more relevant by the time this actually comes out. So. I've been following you working on it for some time now. I mean, you've been at every Bit Devs since the inaugural Bit Devs, and
just about
greatly appreciate. Maybe if you were sick, but obviously no excuses. Better be there anyway.
Yeah. Well, if I wasn't there, who would be?
Well, no, that's like. I mean, that's why. So you've got me. You clued me in on the ordinal wave way before everybody else, and I mean, you also minted the one for the you organized that at the Bit Dev, so that was pretty sweet.
A live demonstration of this software tool that was not particularly stable or well usable at the time.
That was, I think, like we had
it was super hairy. Like it wasn't even clear if it would work.
Yeah, we had a nice like I felt a good discussion about it that meeting too, because we were all talking about like the implications of it, but at the same time, at least I think most people were kind of like, "Whoa, he just did that? Whoa, that's sick!"
Yeah,
and then Casey retweeted about it and all. And so this is cool, man. Can you so you seem like you understand ordinals pretty well, and I don't know, maybe you understand RGB or something, but
you would think,
or hope. That's why it's testnet still.
But that said, there's also so much that like there's a lot of things I know that I don't know.
That's good.
Well, like it's there's so many rabbit holes, like so many, like Peterson commitments or single use seals, right? Like it's like there's a number of different things like you could go down if you want to, or you could just use it. You could just take it as face value, like. This is thing. This is the interface. Like these are the docs. Like
so, for face value, people who don't know what those things are that you said, including myself, because I'm like crescent moon brain. I'm left of the bell curve. Can you explain? Like I'm maybe not 5 because 5-year-olds won't get it, but like 15.
Okay.
The differences between RGB and ordinals, not necessarily from a under the hood perspective, but what does it mean to people? Like if you are wanting to mint a JPEG on Bitcoin for whatever reason, why would you pick one over the other from an end user standpoint? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
aside from the fact that it doesn't exist yet on mainnet.
Yeah. Okay. So at a high level, ordinals inscriptions in particular, if we're talking like ordinals is more
inscriptions, yes. Yeah, inscriptions. Yeah. I use ordinals, but inscriptions.
Good. Yeah. So inscriptions are entirely on chain. So far, there actually have been pull requests where people have said, "Well, could we just put a BitTorrent link on there instead and have people get it from BitTorrent?" But I think that's an evolving discussion.
Okay, when you say it's on chain, what do you mean by? Can you define what that means by it's on chain?
Sure.
You don't see the pictures in the blockchain like when you go to mempool.space.
Well, actually, so you can take media, right? Like any kind of media, text, audio, video, things like that,
and encode it or something.
You can encode it as bytes. That it's not really even like a different encoding. It's just taking the bytes and putting them into a witness script. Like after saying like you have a bit of code that says like to Bitcoin, like ignore anything after this, and then you just put all the data after that,
Right.
and then it like just byte for byte, and
so it just the ORD index keeps track of that data.
Or like the ORD index will scan the blockchain for every transaction, and will look to see in the witness if there's a thing it would recognize.
Can you now compare that to the different, like, what about RGB? Is it not fully on chain in the same way?
Yeah.
As inscriptions?
Yeah, actually not. There's a couple different things. Well, first of all, like the only thing that's really on chain in RGB is the anchor commitment. So you anchor your contract, parts of your contract that are mutable. You'll anchor those to like the state in the contract, right? Mutable state, like say who has these tokens, right? Like you send someone tokens, like you got to mutate the state of the contract. Things that are immutable, you need to attach to a UTXO on chain. And it's a different way to conceptualize like where value is, because generally when we think of Bitcoin, like we think of it as a system of addresses, and like you give me your address and I'll send you something, and I can check my address and see if I got it. But UTXOs and addresses are not the same thing, and you can and you can send you can
reuse an address.
You can have a UTXO that is capable of being spent by the key that is encoded in the in the address, right? But they're not the same thing. And so but UTXOs are really neat because once you spend them, they're spent. And
right.
So it's like a one-time thing.
Can't partially.
Right. And it is atomic, correct? It is
all or nothing.
All or nothing. And this is what is essentially used as a single-use seal, like a thing that you can use once.
Like a tamper-evident bag.
That is tamper-evident, right? You cannot tamper it, and or if you tamper with it, like people will know.
Is there a benefit to RGB's image data being off-chain?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's, like Ordinals, like with very expensive, and also there's a limit, right? Like the largest image you could, or piece of media you can put on chain is 400 kilobytes, and
small.
Well, 400 kilobytes is enough for an image or a short video. It's not that small, right?
This podcast episode, 3 cameras, would be 100 gigs.
Well, and so let's say you wanted to instead,
third of the blockchain.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Well,
say a third of the blockchain size of Bitcoin, but not quite.
Yeah, it's a significant portion, right? And so that doesn't go on chain, and except like there are networks that I am familiar with, actually, because I worked on the protocol in a past life.
Can I say it?
Yeah.
Nah, we won't.
Well, it's
just look at the price. It speaks for itself.
Well, I mean, I'm okay talking about shitcoins so long as people are aware, this is a shitcoin. Do not put your money in it. There are good reasons not to put. Right.
It's an idea.
I wouldn't even say it's not an investment. It's a fucking scam.
Coming in hot, Hunter. I love it, bro.
Well, so what let's get into it. Okay, Filecoin. So I used to work on the protocol.
Swords drawn.
And it paid me pretty well, and it got me working in Rust, and I was really happy about that. But around the same time, I read the Bitcoin Standard, and I started getting the wheels turning in my head. Oh wait, maybe I should understand what this is, how the economics behind this protocol function. And what I come to realize is that, like many shitcoins, it sort of dilutes the value of retail investors
through the economics of the token distribution,
through inflation.
Yeah, and it's almost like that's the whole reason we got out of the fiat system.
Yeah, like you would think there's good reasons to not debase your token, right? And so but it does that, and it's basically a money printer, and the money goes to miners, and the storage miners they begin making money almost immediately. They purchase the hardware. It doesn't actually have to be used by anybody other than miners to stake fill token on their sectors.
So they get there's a subsidy, just like with Bitcoin.
Right. It's a subsidy. Exactly. And there technically are fees, but they're minuscule. If you wanted to store like a terabyte for a year, you could put it on Filecoin for like pennies. It's that ridiculous. But like, this is not inexpensive, right? Like other, like, companies will charge you hundreds of dollars to do this.
Right.
And so where does the money come from? It comes from retail investors who are holding the bag on, subsidizing this network.
It's like it seems like it's every crypto protocol is that way. Like I want to believe that it's not that way, but I have to be honest with myself that like I haven't seen one that isn't. It just seems to me that if there are people who can decide what the distribution schedule is and alter or incentivize the subsidy, I mean, Bitcoin has a block subsidy too. Like we just acknowledged that, right?
No doubt.
But the difference is it's hard coded and it's not changing.
It is effectively immutable.
And I think one major key is that yes, the subsidy is existing. However, the blocks are actually being used. With Filecoin, you said like the transactions, like sure you can store, but like it's not really being utilized to the. Like I think you had said like you basically plug in, you start making money no matter what. That subsidy can't last if no one's using it, right?
Well, it can so long as people are buying Phil.
Oh, jeez. It's like a siphon of money from ignorant people to scammers.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I don't like want to call out any particular, it's just, I mean, first of all, because I don't want to get sued, but like, second, I just like, how can people do this? Like, I mean, you even see Balaji last week, who was the CTO of Coinbase, the shitcoin of shitcoin companies. I mean, in my opinion, out there, the most well-respected shitcoin of shitcoin companies, put it that way. There are worse. And Balaji is coming out and saying, BitSignal, $1 million of Bitcoin in the next 90 days, which I think is absolutely crazy. No way. And then also he's saying no crypto. Like, now's not the time. And I'm like, but like, when is going to be the time? And also like, okay, I typically don't like Balaji's stuff because I know his stance and he's got that same sort of, I don't even want to say it's malicious. And even in the case of Filecoin, I don't know the people. You worked with them, so you might. But in my case, I don't. So I don't want to make an assessment there. But like, even if it's not evil or malicious, it is a very much like a Ponzi-nomics type greater fool theory that they're capitalizing on. And I almost, in Balaji, because he is not saying don't buy these coins, he's very crypto neutral, if you will, most of the time. I usually am like, no, dude, because like that tells me about your integrity. And so when I see him talk about Bitcoin, I also wonder like, who's the messenger? Who's the messenger, right? And it's amazing because you and I both have came from that world where, dude, at one point, like I was all deep in the like coins, like I had the same viewpoint that it's a technology and it's also an investment. So I need to diversify. But then I realized I was getting dunked on by these founders who were changing the tokenomics.
Right. Like any token where we know the founder, and that's a person in reality who wants credit and money, that is in many, like, I think at least that meets at least one of the conditions of the Howey test.
Yeah.
And so, but regardless, and I do want to like take a minute to like appreciate like how incredibly selfless Satoshi was. Right?
That's why it's the CIA.
No,
I don't think any human is capable of that level of selflessness. But go on.
I don't disagree, but I don't think it's the CIA.
Okay, it was Gandhi then. Fine. Gandhi wasn't alive then, but
I think it would make a lot of sense to give humans this technology if you're like an alien civilization who wanted to. It has to be, man. Like,
really,
I think it would make a lot of sense, right? Like if there's like some kind of like galactic community that's at peace with each other. I didn't think
we were going here, but let's go, dude.
Fuck yeah, let's get into the woo. But I love the woo, you know?
All right, so Bitcoin was created by aliens because only aliens could have the level of like disconnectedness from money to be like, here, let's give them this technology. It's going to revolutionize their society.
They're either going to figure out what to do with it. Like everybody either figures out what to do with this or they destroy themselves.
It's like
they go into a dark age.
You've seen 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah, it's like the monolith. Yeah, it's very much like that. It's
the pillar.
I mean, like think about it. Like this is the technology. Like even someone was like, the end state of proof of work is a Dyson sphere around the sun. And he was saying that as like kind of a criticism, but I thought that was like kind of awesome.
Yeah, because it's like,
incredible.
Let's just skip the like in between. We know where we're headed.
Yeah, let's just like Kardashev type 1, you know, within our lifetimes. Who knows, right? And like the other things that get me going down that path are like, you know, things like software. Like as I'm reading this, I'm kind of like coming to the realization that Bitcoin could actually be something that, like, on the surface, Jason's claim that like this will replace warfare, it sounds like, you know, very silly.
Yeah.
Kind of like how, like, you know, on the surface, putting JPEGs on the blockchain could disintermediate the government from certain things like property registers, like the DMV, right? And so it sounds silly at first, but like when you think about it, like what kind of disputes we resolve through warfare, you know, for example, like the formation of the petrodollar, right? Yeah. The origin of the petrodollar. You know, Kissinger, they make a deal with the Saudis. They're making money hand over fist. They don't have a place to put their money, so. Like, cause it's all sand, you know, in the 70s. And so, they need a place to put the money in. And on the flip side, you know, the United States is like the superpower. We just hit peak oil. We, you know, are running into our own kind of monetary issues. We just went off the gold standard. And there's all these people out in the desert making tons of money. And we'd like to, you know, make a deal. And imagine if we hadn't made that deal, right? Like how different the Middle East would be right now. Like probably not as well off as it is now.
No, absolutely
right?
not.
And even though they would have the money, like we'd probably go in and pull a Saddam or a Gaddafi, right? And as we would, you know, that would be our formula for like, you use our money or else, right?
Right.
And that kind of situation, like that kind of sort of trade disagreement, maybe could have been resolved in a more equitable way. Now, am I saying would it have been good to run, you know, Saudi oil on Bitcoin mining or something? Probably not. But like nowadays, it makes a lot of sense to have an incentive to produce more energy than you need, especially if the energy doesn't have those negative externalities that, you know, people discuss, whether they're valid or not. What does matter is the economics. And if you can fundamentally alter the economics of energy, then you can kind of usher in like a very transformational era in human history. Because you know, every time we've had, you know, a massive transformation, the capability to transfer energy or create energy, right? Like the steam engine, right? The locomotive, that was a
quality of life improvements.
Huge, right? Right. The automobile, like the gas engine, later industrial revolutions. And then of course nuclear power, right? That was transformational. So it's incredibly valuable. And another thing is energy is a fundamental limiting factor of economics. Like any economy, like people can actually know that China is lying about their GDP figures by like maybe even double because we know how many lights are on. And like we can look at other countries and their GDP figures that we trust and see how many lights they have on at night. And we can just do satellite scans and just count how many lights are on.
Computers can do that.
Right. And that's a form of proof of work, how much light you're shining into the sky. And so
it is. You're displaying energy.
Right. And so what's interesting is like, we could just, instead of shining energy in the sky, we could just use it to secure a monetary network.
Right.
And so we could get an undeniable idea of a economic block's,
value or
influence.
Contribution,
like their size of their capability to contribute, right? Like that economic block's influence could be directly correlated to proof of work.
The free floating currencies skew the information accuracy because you have to not only
price signals are completely lost in inflation. Right. One example of that I have is the MacBook Pro. The latest MacBook Pro came out, and I read a news article that it was supposed to be scandalous. It was like
so expensive.
Well, no, actually, it was the same price. But for the same amount of storage, the storage was slower. And it was like they were complaining about that. And I was like, well, wait a second. Isn't that because you just need fewer chips to make it? And like normally, in an economy where it's not an inflationary hellscape, you would have the price signal of like, oh, it would go down in price because it's simpler to produce.
Right. Technological deflationary forces.
Right. Now, like obviously, like if you have fewer chips, you can write to fewer of them at once. And so you lose that bandwidth. Right. And so like they made it more efficient. They made it in a way, they made it out of better technology and they were able to make it cheaper, but they weren't able to charge less for it because of inflation. And as a result, it was kind of considered a form of shrinkflation, but like that innovation was lost in that muddying of price signals
because
that inflation causes.
If we had a fixed ruler to measure the value of something on in that perfect all things else equal, ceteris paribus, they say, then the price would have went down.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right. And people, they would have hailed Apple for, making this more efficient, cheaper computer. Cheaper. Right. They would have been, oh, nice, Apple. Thank you for bringing, computing that's nice to, everyday people. Right. But nope, that's not how we can't have nice things just yet.
When do you think Apple will buy Bitcoin? I mean, because they're sitting on one of the largest cash positions.
It would make a lot of sense for them too.
I mean, doesn't it? Like they have the Apple Cash.
Any company that size, honestly, I can't think of a person that it wouldn't really make sense for them to consider buying Bitcoin so long as they understood what they were getting.
Sometimes I don't even understand the full ramifications of it.
Well, that's a good point too, because it's the most complicated thing. It combines pretty much everything into one thing.
Like we're talking about math, science, war, behavioral analysis,
history, culture,
rhetoric, politics, culture, history, law. I mean, what is the definition? What is
contracts,
law?
Right?
The enforcement of contract law. And what does enforceable even mean?
Property rights.
Yeah. Like it's really
bearer instruments.
Time value of money and time preference of consumption, debt. It's really,
and not just even above all that shit. Like those are fundamentals. Like those are like what you'll study in school. But like the most interesting thing to me, most fascinating thing to me is not the tech or the fundamentals.
It's dick butt, number one. Dick butt.
No, it's the impact.
Dang,
dude.
I thought I had it.
It's the impact.
Oh man,
it is the most transformational.
Number one inscription, dude.
Fuck, Zach. No, like it's the impact. It's what it can do, what change it can bring to the world. It is the most ambitious project and undertaking I could imagine putting my time towards.
Absolutely.
Reinventing the world's financial system up top, Bitcoin. Like that's, I think, one of the most ambitious and hardest problems somebody could consider giving me to work on.
Completely agree. It's literally, I mean, I don't have kids and I don't have like, you know, aside from like my immediate family, like, you know, I don't, at this point in my life, I can't think of a thing, and I think I'm right there with you. Like, I can't think of a thing that would be more meaningful to work on than Bitcoin because of what I believe the large implications of it will be in the future. And
it's going to change everything. It's not hyperbole to say it's just everything's going to be different because of Bitcoin.
Everything. And to look back on that and be like, wow, let's say I don't have kids, you know, or like whatever, like don't get married. Like, at least I have something that I can look back on and be like, I was a part of this movement that forever made an impact on Earth. Okay. Like, life wasn't a waste, I guess. Like, it wasn't all some hedonic quest to just jump from like one pleasure sense to another.
It does give you a sense of fulfillment.
And even though, and Eric and I, my friend, were talking about this, he asked me a really good question. He says, well, if you didn't have any Bitcoin, which I was like, I don't.
Right. Yeah.
If you didn't have any Bitcoin, would you still care as much about Bitcoin? And I was like, no. Because I think it would be very foolish to say that to 100% of the enthusiasm behind Bitcoin is separate from the possibility of what my life could be like in that world. However, I then asked him a question after. I said, would it be to the same degree? No. But let me ask you a different question. If I were to lose all my Bitcoin, let's say everything, all the 20, 30 years of work that I put in, and then I lost it all. Bitcoin becomes the world's currency and it's all gone. Would I feel that my life was the work still worth it? And I think yes. Would I be devastated? Yes. Would it be worth it still? Yes. And ultimately what he was trying to get to is like, are you motivated and prophetizing Bitcoin because of your financial interest that you stand to gain from it? And I was like, no, I don't own any Bitcoin. But what I really did actually kind of understand was that it is important for me that we get to a framework where the world is a better place, and that the people who start fresh in 2040 have a better opportunity than maybe we were born into. But I think I had to be real with myself and admit that part of the reason I care so much about that is because I feel like I kind of got cheated when I was younger and have like wanted to be that change. So I wonder how many people are equally or not just for you and I. Certainly the movement and the ability to build a better world through Bitcoin is obviously important. But I wonder how many people don't approach Bitcoin because they ignorantly think that everyone in Bitcoin is motivated by the selfish profit mode. And how can we stop that?
I can answer that. You might be interested in my answer to that. For the longest time, I was not really even able to stack. I was working in the Bitcoin industry for at least 8 or 9 months before I was able to like kind of feel financially secure enough to start saving. Yeah. And that didn't, reduce my dedication in the slightest. It didn't diminish my commitment or, my sense of that this is valuable. I also don't like earn as much money as I once did, and I could probably triple my salary if I were, wanted to work in pretty much anything else.
Different end, right?
And so, obviously money is not really a motivating factor to me as much. However, incentives do help. And, right. One thing that will be an incentive for me, I can say now because it's not going to be broadcasted for a little bit, is I'm actually, and I haven't even told my founders this, or like my company this just yet, is I'm working on a NFT project, like what we call them unique digital assets, by the way, UDAs. We're going to launch them on DIBA, or Digital Bitcoin Assets, our platform. I'm working on a UDA collection that I call Bitcoin Kitties. And it's a reference to crypto kitties.
Right.
Do you know? Yeah. I want to do cats on Bitcoin. And I knew a starving artist who, like, you know, was really productive and just down on their luck. And I was like, but they really like Bitcoin, and, you know, they were willing to accept Bitcoin in payment. And I was like, well, you know what? I've been stacking for a bit. The market's been kind to me, because I was able to stack it like December. Anyway.
16,000, 17,000.
Yeah. I lost pretty much all my savings from that, unfortunately. So I had to buy new Bitcoin in the very moment to pay my friend. But, you know, that said, when I paid my friend, you know, that was really helpful for them at that time. It wasn't a lot of money to me, but it was a lot of money to them. And we worked out a deal where, you know, we'd create a collection of 100 Bitcoin kitties. We'd sell them at 10 million sats each. And we'd split the proceeds. And I don't expect to sell all of them, really. Like, we want to have a variety. Some people will identify with one or another. And if they really value it, they'd put forward the sats and help,
10 million.
Yeah.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, man. That's unique digital assets. You know, it's only one. It's only ever going to be one. But regardless, I like to think the art is really unique and cool too. It's not like, you know, monkeys, bored apes or something. No, it's not that. Wow. And also even the crypto kitties were kind of ugly and gross looking. Yeah, it was silly, and CryptoPunks were just kind of like whatever.
Yeah,
like,
it's all bad.
Yeah, like nonsense.
At least a 12-fold, like, those looked cool.
Everything on DIBA, by the way, if you go to like DIBA.io,
sweet looking.
It is beautiful art
because it can store way more data, right? Is that why? Or
yeah, absolutely. We can store many gigabytes, and
so you can have like high quality, several megabyte GIFs,
originals, all that. Yeah. And it's yeah. So I'm very proud of the work that we're putting forth. It's sketch quality. It's not, you know, like I would say like fully, you know, but we also have a timeline. We want to launch by the time Miami comes around, and so it's almost like a bit of an investment to me, like a little bit of cheese at the end of the, you know.
So you got something to talk about there,
yeah. Basically, well,
show people,
right, not just that, but also like it's an incentive for me to bust ass to get this, you know, platform ready and by that time. And so I think, you know, my coworkers won't be too mad at me for, you know, using the platform that I build for personal gain, because I'm going to really, you know, try my damn hardest to make this viable and a reality for us to launch on by that date. And there's so much work that needs to be done. And it also, as like a personal user of this platform, it also is kind of like allows me to think through the user experience as like an actual user who wants to make money from this. Mm-hmm. And that's invaluable, I think, from like a product development perspective. Building something that you yourself would use. And
totally.
Yeah. And so I figured that was like a win-win in a couple different ways. And so, yeah.
This is a DIBA collection. It's coming out on DIBA.
Oh, yes.
Which is testnet only, I thought.
Well, you remember, we're trying to get to mainnet.
Oh, right. So this is like the first collection to launch on DIBA, essentially. All right. Dude, I might need a kitty. Just saying. 10 million is a stiff price, though, bro.
It's a bargain.
I mean, I'm a dog guy personally, so like you're gonna have to work on me on that one.
It's all good.
What else? Because we'll wrap up here. Like, what other projects would you like to? You know, shill is a negative connotation, but I don't think there's any maliciousness here. So, like, what are some messages or just things that you would like to get out to the world? Whether it's like how to find you or like something that people should know that are listening to this podcast or find your project.
Yeah,
or
well,
all the above?
Carbonado. I really want to talk about
that.
Carbonado.
What is that? Let's talk about that real quick.
It is how would you say, I don't want to like, it's basically like, I don't, so I came to develop it. I came to develop Carbonado because at Filecoin, when I was working on the Filecoin protocol, I had this like thing in the back of my head where I was like, this is way too complicated, the problem it's solving. Like we don't need a blockchain to prove that, to solve the problem that Filecoin was solving.
Sure, okay.
And so Filecoin, it came into existence, it wasn't like, we're going to scam retail investors. It came into existence because it was going to solve a problem in a decentralized manner. And the problem was that IPFS, which was made by Protocol Labs, they...
what a misnomer. Because protocol and labs, like company, protocol, is it a company or protocol? Anyway, we'll cut that.
It's all good. But yeah, so...
no, I forgot. You said it was made by Protocol Labs.
So it's made by, so IPFS is made by Protocol Labs, and it has this this problem where once you exceed the capacity of a node, it starts to delete stuff that isn't used as much, and so you could lose data if you and
just
so
deletes your data. What the
well, because like there's no monetary incentive to keep it, so what you need to do is introduce a monetary incentive. And what they did was there was the capability to pin files for the users, and then they would be kept from garbage collected. They would be pinned, and so that would be a way to like reserve storage.
Mm-hmm. And so what is Carbonado?
Carbonado.
How's it different?
Well, it's
not a pasta dish.
Well, actually, it's very similar to IPFS pinning in some ways, but
it's very similar to pasta dish. Spaghetti carbonado,
right? Actually, a carbonado is
my jokes are horrible.
It's all good. A carbonado is a type of diamond. It is a black diamond that is more durable than an ordinary diamond, and it is completely optically opaque. And
it's like Vanta Black,
right? And they think it's formed through some cosmic mechanism, either from like meteors crashing on the ground and beating like diamonds out of soil, or it could just be cosmic diamonds that were floating out in space and they just landed here because there are carbonaceous asteroids. So like there's something cosmic about these things. We don't really know how they come from Earth, but we found them, and they were originally found in Brazil because Brazil at the time, like 1800s, had a lot of diamond mines, and and so it's I thought it was a fantastic name for a storage format that is designed to be highly durable,
but also go ahead.
Well, and also like storage is like data is non-fungible. So like diamonds are non-fungible, right? Like diamonds
each one is unique. To cuts, the impurities. Where's the opacity part come into play? Like,
it's encrypted by default.
There we go. I knew it. That's a nice name. I think that was well thought out.
Thank you. And the proposals that we use, like kind of like the protocol specifications, they're called chips.
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 Carbonado, something improvement proposal.
Carbonado hardening proposal.
Amazing, dude. Yeah. Chips and nuts, dude. Bitcoin, cashew nuts.
Yeah. Good stuff. I was thinking that they're actually it's in reference to like chips of a diamond, right? Like a chip diamond.
Oh, right, man. How do you guys are so smart. I'm just a dumb person.
It's all good. But yeah, so anyway, going back to like
so like
IPFS for a second, the reason Filecoin came into existence was because the pinning service, where like you would pay someone to hold data for you, that was not decentralized enough for them.
Okay.
They were like, we need a world storage computer.
Right.
You know, we need this like decentralized network and blockchain to put the data on, and it'll be completely decentralized. And it's D-Web. It's very dweeb, you know? So, anyway, and then they like proceeded to raise like $1 billion on this idea. They were like one of the biggest ICOs of 2018
or something.
Yes, 17 or something like that. And so, and it took them a while to build it because it was incredibly complex, like their solution to this. Like it was like a Rube Goldberg machine of a blockchain. Like it has two kinds of storage proofs, and then also Gates proof of stake mechanism.
Oh, geez.
And what's interesting is that the miners actually have to, like, they call it storage mining, but the miners actually have to purchase the fill to stake on their sectors. So like they can commit capacity, but in order to do it, like they first of all, they have to buy some of the most expensive server grade hardware that exists. Right. And like I spec'd out a storage mining rig, and I was like, should I I was looking at it, it looked like it was going to cost about $25,000. And in addition, I would need to spend another $25,000 on the fill to stake on the sectors to earn any money back. And what's interesting is that very early on, and this is the really skeezy part, really early on, because the miners were forced to purchase fill from the market, and the miners were all starting to come online, there was a huge demand for fill. And so the price number went way up real early on. Like they just launched a few, weeks or months in, and the number went way up, and people were like, oh my goodness, there's all-time highs. Right, and like, and then now they're looking at fill at like $3, and they're like, oh wow, it's such a steal. We're going to go back to the all-time high.
60, never.
That was never going to happen, because that was a one-time thing, and I don't know if that was intentional tokenomics on their end to have that eye-catching figure, but that is the end result of what happened. And now they just have a bunch of retail investors who just saw that number, and they were like, we'll get back there. It'll happen again.
It's crazy, dude. It's like the...
But regardless, the problem that Filecoin ultimately solved for IPFS was archival. And like kind of the core, it's not just like decentralized storage. Like IPFS is decentralized storage, but it's not good enough for archival. And I wanted to solve the problem of archival without needing a blockchain. And like, as I was working on the protocols, just kind of thinking in the back of my head, like, how would I do this better? How would I do this simpler? And, once I was like, they let me go because I was starting to get really hard to work with. Like as I was,
you mean you called them out on their bullshit?
Well, what it is like whenever I'm working on something, I want to care a lot about it, and I want to put my best towards it, right? Yeah. And like I had this like kind of like conflict in me that like I was forcing myself to work on and care about something. I remember
talking to you about that.
And I was just incredibly intense to work with, probably. And that they were Canadians, so that also didn't help. This like loudmouth, like angry American, like it's it was I was ultimately not a culture fit, and it's fair, but like also it really did hurt and feel like a betrayal, because like my performance was not what would compromise that position. And I was still going like a mile a minute up until the point where they fired me.
Was it just like the fundamental, like it was just, you knew that you felt like what you're talking about now, right? Which is that like Bitcoin is the solution. You wanted to build it without the token, tokenomics.
Yeah. But actually, one thing I do have to say is that I kind of do have to say that Saifedean I lost my job because I read the Bitcoin standard.
Yeah. Once you do that, you kind of can't go back. So I understand.
Yeah. Like right as I started that job in like February, I was just
I remember when we met, you had just started or were working at Filecoin, and we were talking about that. And I was like, I don't know, dude, I'm kind of like a Bitcoin maxi, and you seem to like Filecoin. And then shortly thereafter, as we got to know each other better, things changed.
Yeah, well, amazing. I was just able to be more true to myself and
love that, bro.
My principles and what I value. And so after that, I kind of did like a bit of like Rust therapy, what I call Rust therapy, because like Rust is writing Rust, once you're good at it, it's an incredibly rewarding and nice experience. It's just so nice. Like the frustration's not there like you would. Right. Well, I don't
understand, but
actually, I shouldn't say the frustration's not there. It's just, it's a different kind of frustration. It's the kind of frustration you get, like, let's say you're going up on a hike and like you see it's a little steeper over here and you're like, fuck, I got to go up that way. And you go up there though, and you reach the top and it compiles and you're like, fuck yes, yeah. I did something incredibly difficult and I feel really good about it because this code that I wrote is so good looking and it works so well. It's so efficient.
Perfect spacing.
Yeah. And so, well, more efficient data structures or it allocates memory and it fits together better in my mind.
To be completely honest, I don't really quite understand I can't relate to that feeling for the same, but I do think probably those who are more technically minded who listen to this will understand.
Do you build anything?
So, I like put together the value stack website with WordPress and I'm self-hosting that. Well, not self-hosting it, but like I literally got a VPS and built it. I didn't just like rent out a WordPress server from somewhere.
Did you try to build it the best you could have?
Without I think when I stood up and I screamed at my computer because I had no idea what I was doing and I was sick of troubleshooting.
Stretching your limits, yeah.
I was like, okay, good enough.
Oh, okay.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Because what happened was I tried doing the whole Nostr NIP05 verification and you had to modify a CORS policy and put this file on there. Yep, and I was just like...
I've done that too. I've been in that spot.
Thank you, Derek Ross. Thank you, bro, for helping me get that set up. I was just like, I had it, dude. I was like, for some reason, I was logging in as different users. The port forwarding wasn't, the Nginx reverse proxy was not. I was just like, dude, I'm done. I'll come back to this later. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to rebuild this and go with Hugo. And my buddy ChatGPT is just like, hey, I got you, bro. Here's how you do that. And I'm like, well, how do you do this? And it's like, don't worry, I got you.
Gotcha. So generally, somebody who does this kind of work for a living will come to care about their craft and they'll want to develop really clever solutions that work really well and fit nicely in their mind. And so it's I guess it's just something like an expert craftsman could relate to or appreciate.
I can understand that. I feel that way about the podcast production.
Actually, give yourself some credit. Like this is like an incredibly professional setup. I was honestly a little surprised that my buddy who I've been bullshitting with this past couple years, oh my goodness, this is legit. Yeah. And I was literally expecting a link to some
Zoom meeting.
Yeah, something like that, and StreamYard or something like that. No, it was here we are, and I was like, oh fuck, so there isn't a link, and so I
was like, what link, dude? Do you want the address?
Why is he asking me if I like brisket?
Oh, which by the way, thank you. I have that. I need to give you that.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I made some and sliced it up.
I love brisket. Is it beef or it's beef, right?
Yeah, it's beef brisket. It's
so good.
It's smoky. It's got a very strong smoky.
Do you have any sauce on it?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm a purist.
Yeah.
I went Texas style.
Yeah.
Went great. Salt, pepper. That was it.
Wow.
It's got a nice bark
That's got to be really good for so I've been trying to do some keto stuff, just trying to
I do
down on sugar, and that's just going to be so good for the keto end of it. Yeah, that'll be good. I'm actually losing weight a little bit since we last.
Congrats, man. Dude. I thought I'd never mention this on the podcast, but I don't know if you guys have been telling, but your boy's gotten jacked over the last 6 months. Literally have not skipped leg day ever since I think I started working out last summer. in the bottom of the bull market or bottom of the bear market, because I was like, well, I can't control the Bitcoin price. What are things that I can control? One of them is my own health to some degree. Like you don't have, you don't have complete control over your own health, but to the degree that I can, I want to be able to control that. So I'm just like, you know what, dude, get your ass in the gym, start eating healthy, stop eating at 11:30 at night. Cause like I freaking love eating chocolate right before I go to bed. Every time I'm just like, I can't help it, dude. And I don't drink alcohol either. So I justify it in my mind. It's like, well, you don't drink, dude. So like you can eat whatever you want. And it's like, yes, but anyway, congrats on your dedication.
Well, yeah, and it's a common thing for Bitcoiners to do, right? It's almost like stereotypical that like
of your life.
We start focusing on health, like the things that matter to us, and there's kind of that joke, like the seed oils, the meme, yes, right? But there's truth to it, and seed oils are dude. If you know someone in your life who isn't aware of the dangers of seed oils, like I swear, like you should make sure that they're aware. And also, if you love them, also maybe explain to them that maybe Bitcoin might be a thing.
I was going to say, and if there's someone in your life that isn't aware there's a problem with fiat currency, also tell them that.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you on Twitter, find out more information about your projects and stuff that you're working on?
You can find me. So my handle on Twitter is CryptoQuick, and that's also my website, cryptoquick.com. And so it's funny is I get a lot of shit for like every time one of my tweets blow up, they're like, there's some guy who's like, oh, crypto. And it's like, you know what? Crypto means more than just like cryptocurrency.
Cryptography.
Yeah, like actually I came up with that name for myself back in 2005 when I was using IRC and Freenode.
There you go.
And like,
take that, haters.
Yeah, and also another thing there's even something more like kind of sad, I would say. Like I can't change that name now. And here's why.
Because it's you.
No, it's because scammers will come in and impersonate me and use it to scam my friends and my loved ones. No. Yeah, it's kind of fucked up now.
Yeah, well, I don't have any friends or loved ones, so I won't have to worry about that.
Well, but
I'm just kidding. I do.
I'm just saying
this isn't a sob session.
Well, but like the thing is, like you have to be aware. Like there are definitely scammers out there, and they will prey on you, and you have to be very upfront. Like with your circle, like about these threats, and they usually prey on the low hanging fruit. So Bitcoiners aren't as affected. Yeah. We're much more vigilant and
privy to that.
Well, because like it's part of our culture. Don't trust, verify, right? So like you don't trust this fucker who's coming into your DMs who's like, hey, I got this big business opportunity, or sir, sir,
check out my trading report.
Yeah, do you
send me 2 Bitcoin? I'll send you 4 back.
Sir?
How is your trade going, dude? I'll tell you what, it's going a lot better than it was a month ago.
Well, but we're not trading.
Right.
I'm not trading. I'll just speak from. I don't trade. I don't have
it's a long-term trade. I'm trading my time for the world's hardest money.
That's a way to say it. I'm just saving. I'm saving in sound money.
Right. I'm trading time for the world's hardest money, so that if I don't plan on using it all to extract value out of it, somebody else can, and it holds its value in the meantime. So that's what we're working towards, right? Like fundamentally, it comes down to give humans a way to preserve their time and energy into the future, so that they can, if they're not going to use it all today, have some to capitalize on tomorrow, because we aren't infinite energy beings. We don't have a Dyson sphere around the sun. And I don't think those things aren't changing at any time. In the next 6 weeks.
Oh, well.
But Balaji says that Bitcoin's going to be $1 million in 90 days.
Okay,
so.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more like within the next decade, we're going to solve some really fundamental problems. Elon Musk is about to launch a rocket that...
You can stay there for all I care.
And this might not like age well, but like it's probably going to blow up. But like that said, he is about to launch a rocket that is about to take the cost to launch payload into orbit from like thousands of dollars per kilogram to just 10. And what's really interesting about that, what's it?
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's an incredibly huge deal. And the thing is that like people don't understand is about like like, here's another reason why buy Bitcoin. Like, I'm sorry, gold bugs, but do you know how much
take gold with you to space, bro?
Well, no. What I'm saying is, what I'm about to say is, the cost of a kilogram of gold.
That's what I'm saying.
$60,000. The cost to launch a metric ton to, orbit. Well, like a kilogram to orbit, but like 100 metric tons of kilograms. That's gonna cost you $10. And what I'm trying to say is, if somebody can find a way to arbitrage, right? Say somehow in space, find a way to get gold, and you can put up equipment at $10 per kilo,
Gold's
and you can arbitrage between 60,000.
Done for.
Yeah, it's done for. It's done for as a store of value, and
we know this because asteroids have infinite. I mean, there is to practical infinite gold,
right?
And everything that is of physical nature, and we got to wrap because there's waiting. Everything of physical nature is infinite. On a large enough scale from our perspective,
right?
There is infinite gold in the universe from our tiny little human perspective on Earth. But guess what? There is a finite
amount of Bitcoin, right?
So
that's going to be the way we enable abundance. We have energy plus scarcity, right? Like, we're solving for energy. We're solving for the way we distribute this scarce goods in an economy, right? And so fix the money, fix the world. There's some truth to that.
Fix the money, fix the world, and then in the future, solar system, interstellar, and beyond.
Oh, and one thing one final point I want to make is central banks are some of the largest holders of gold. So right. like Elon's working on a way that's going to rug central banks.
Love that.
Yeah. In a really real way.
All right. Maybe Elon's not so bad.
Yeah.
Well, Hunter, thank you for coming on this episode of Value Stack Podcast. Talking about Rust and JPEGs and the future of human development and civilizations, wide ranging conversation. And yeah, man, we're going to be on this road together, and thank you so much for becoming an integral, critical part of the Denver Bit Devs. I appreciate your contribution there and showing up. I think that's the best thing you can do, is just show up every day, put in your all. What can people object about on that?
Yeah, so I appreciate you giving me this platform and this opportunity to, just speak my mind, to be able to like present myself to the world. I like to think like, I have some value that some people might appreciate. And so
you better stack that value and hit subscribe. And if you haven't checked out inscription number 265, it's going to be there forever. So you got time. Thank you, Hunter, for coming on the show, brother.